It's not always fun and games for first responders.
05 Central, you show me in pursuit.
But sometimes it is.
Oh my God, he's not wearing pants again.
Sometimes it's dangerous.
Flipping around, look out, look out, look out.
Sometimes it's not.
Antler Boulevard for a snake in a house.
And sometimes it's just plain stupid.
Chihuahua in his lap on a lawnmower.
This is the stupid side of first response.
Dispatch, do I really have to go to that?
This is Code 0.5.
Come in 0.5.
Hey guys, Jason again with my co-host Rich, and we're still in the Victory Studios. We haven't been kicked out.
Yes, no eviction notice yet.
Yeah, and then freaking Rennick showed up.
Yeah.
You know, the whole you feed a stray dog and it never goes away?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's back.
But you'll probably end up with an eviction notice because you know he'll be passed out on the floor, snow cone drunk.
Well, I evict his ass right now. And then on today's episode, we've got a guest with us. I'm going to call him Special Agent Logan.
Yeah. The Fed boy himself, ladies and gentlemen.
Oh. But he's got some law enforcement background. He's got some stuff he can talk to us about. But before he talks about any of his law enforcement stories, I have something that I've been wanting to ask him. I've heard some stuff, and I need him to clear the air. I heard at one point that when the Renniks came down here, he had no place to go. So you two, he had like no furniture or nothing, and you two were like spooning together every night.
So
like you shared the bed and everything, and you let the Rennick stay with you, and
that's kind of correct. I made him be the little spoon though. So like we try to keep it consistent that way. But yeah. So he was a little spoon with me for a while, just for probably 6 months or so.
Now see, I've heard the stories of Rich having to work with his ass. What in the hell was it like living with him?
You know, so for the most part, our work schedule was kind of opposite. So we didn't really interact much. We just played a lot of video games. So
God bless you.
So really it wasn't, it really wasn't that bad. He just kind of minded his own, to be fair. So it's not as bad as you would think.
So you would work during the day?
Yeah. So
now at night when you were trying to sleep and he was off, was he up all night playing his damn video games?
Oh yeah. He had the weirdest schedule. Like, you know, he would sleep for like, I don't know what time he would sleep, but, I would just be all times of night and day, just video games going. You know, supposed to be studying for the academy, and I hear like, you know, video games going, and I walk in there and he's got his little bitty ranky laptop for his cleat stuff going, and then he's just playing video games. I'm like, hey man, I think you're supposed to be focusing on that over there. But,
I've seen some of his studying, you know, quote unquote.
Screaming at the TV, 1v1 me.
And you think he's really good for the amount of like shit he talks and does stuff. You think he'd be really good, but you know, he wasn't.
Absolutely.
So it's kind of wild.
Absolutely horrible.
Yeah. Talking trash to 5-year-olds.
So. Yeah, that is.
Keep it up, little man. I'm going to find your mom. You'll be calling me stepdaddy.
The greatest part, we'll get some of our friends together. They're all cops and play video games. But the amount of, you know, people, the shit they talk to us or the things they say, and, you know, in this job, you get thick skin, you don't care. But when you get us all together and we start shit talking these kids or like people that aren't in the same profession they are, you get people that are like crying, rage quitting, and you're like, oh, we're awful people. Like, what have we become? You know, you're like, what are we? But it makes for a great time.
You feel bad for like half a second, then you go on to the next.
And then you
thing.
just remember that like they're gonna just go do it to somebody else too. So
yeah, they're gonna save that one and be like, "Oh, you are foul. That was disgusting." But I'm gonna use that.
Yeah. So, but no, I mean, honestly, it wasn't too bad. Just kind of minded his own, to be fair. Not as bad as you would think, right? Like working with him's a lot worse than living with him, I think.
Ouch.
So, well, I'm just saying.
Yeah, I was expecting
Writing old lady tickets, you know.
Hey.
Cornhole boards.
I was gonna say the reason you haven't been evicted, there's no cornhole boards here, so it's all fine. But
now, see, Rich has talked about before how he, you know, sits on his couch, you know, nothing but his tidy whities eating a block of cheese. I didn't know if you ever got to witness that.
No, thank God he was clothed most of the time. Except when we were spooning, of course, but that was invited. So
he's got while we're spooning, of course.
The showers were weird, you know. But other than that,
oh, okay.
I thought we weren't going to talk about that.
Well, no, we were trying to save water. The city I live in, the bills are expensive. Renniks did let my water get turned off that one time.
Oh yeah, I remember.
The city
that.
came and turned off our water. They're like, "You're behind. You're like 3 months behind on your water bill." And I was like, "No, I'm not." And Renniks calls me, he's like, the pipes are frozen. The pipes are frozen. So
Because it was really
I
cold.
leave work. I like come home. One of my plumber friends is like coming over to take a look at it. And I get there and I'm like, the water like turn on and it comes out for a minute and then just nothing. And I was like, no, they're frozen. And my house is, I don't know, built in the late 80s. So, it's not. And I was like, man, I've never had the pipes frozen. It was a horrible storm last year. And Renniks and I are in there. I'm like, okay, turn on now. We're like we're heating up the pipes. We got like mosquito tape and stuff. And I walk outside of like frustration. I walk out a super long driveway. Like walk down. I'm like, dude, this is going to be expensive. And I look over and there's a big orange like notice on my mailbox. And I was like, Renniks, what is this? And I don't know. And I look at it and they're like, oh, you haven't paid your water bill. So I called them and they were like, oh, it must have been for the wrong house. You can just turn it back on. I was like, oh, okay, thanks. So I had I'd already paid a plumber to come out. It was great. It's all Rennick's fault.
I was going to say, how does that work? Is you paying him, giving him the money to go pay the water bill?
You would think
not doing it.
Buying all his Taco Bell with it.
Yeah.
See, so honestly, that was the most dangerous part of him living there is that, so like I'm outside of town, but I'm like 5 minutes from down like this in the city I live in, all the businesses. So it made it easy. I'm just going to run over here and get some food or like DoorDash some food. When you're out here in the boonies, you can't do that. So probably cause for some of his weight gain. I don't know.
Now, have you noticed out there at Taco Bell, the one that he frequents, that they used to have the 2 drive-through lanes. They have a third one now.
Is that for Renniks?
It's a Renniks lane. His orders are larger.
Yeah.
It's the extended wait line. Renniks is the kind of guy that, if you go to Sonic, there's the drive-in, you pull in and park, you order food, and then there's the pull around that you can get drinks and stuff.
Yeah.
He's a guy that orders a full-on meal and then parks right there and interrupts everybody for the next 20 minutes.
At the drive-through part?
Yeah.
See, you are a bastard.
Yeah, I know, that's the worst kind of person.
He's like, I wonder who else's day I can fuck up.
Yeah.
Oh, you're supposed to order at the drive-through.
Yeah, everybody will go on rants on Facebook about how this is only for drinks and blah, blah, blah.
Order ahead, man. The app, you get discount. Show up and it's all.
You show me on anywhere at a Sonic where it says the drive-through is specifically for
See,
drinks.
this is what I'm talking about. The worst kind of person.
Common
it's
knowledge.
Called courtesy, asshole. It's
like an unwritten rule. I mean,
yeah, you just, God. But no, so yeah, and I remember, so it was probably our first week down here, pulling over the old city judge.
That one, yeah.
I still blame you for it.
I came whipping in,
and
he's standing up there at the freaking driver's side window talking to the judge, and I was like, "What are you doing?" He was like, "I'm trying to get this guy's information." I was like, "That's the judge. Let him go."
So what do we call smelly kid that got washed out of the academy?
Mayonnaise.
Oh, mayonnaise.
Mayonnaise. Okay. So I got forced for mayonnaise to ride with me, mind you, which this kid smelled so bad.
Okay, I didn't know that part.
So it was awful. I went and I bought Febreze at the store here and he was like, "Oh, sorry." I was like, "No, God." Anyway, so we get behind this in this town, there's not a lot of new vehicles, we'll say, okay? So we get behind this and he's all over the road, all over, across the center line, coming back across, going over, and doesn't stop all the way to the stop sign, turns. We're behind him for a while, doesn't use his blinker, still all over the road. And he's speeding up and slowing down. So he's doing that okay. So I'm like, okay, this guy's got to be, and it's 3 a.m. I'm like, this guy's got to be plastered. So we light him up and he doesn't stop. He just keeps on going. And I was like, okay, here we go. Well, we're doing 35 and it's 25 through there with my lights on behind him. So I blip the siren. Eventually he pulls over and, call out the plate, get up there. And he says, well, I'm the judge of blank town. And I'm like, okay, well, you have your license and insurance with you? And he's like, well, I'm the judge here. And I was like, okay, do you have your license and insurance with you? And he's like I said, I'm the judge here and I'm the fire chief. And I was like, well, that's unfortunate, but I don't know you, so I need your license and your insurance. And so he starts digging. He's like, are you serious about this? He's like, and all of a sudden Renniks comes flying up behind him. He slams on the brake and he comes waddling up there. And it's like, hey, man, this is the, I was like, well, okay, I don't know him. He could be anybody.
Yeah, congratulations.
And the funniest thing the funniest thing I did ever see, he looks at me and he goes, it's a bold claim to say you're the judge of this size of a town. He was like, why would I lie about that? He said it's not really a status symbol. And I was like, that's fair, I guess. And then he's like, yeah. And then he argues like, well, you don't have to use your blinker if there's no traffic. If there's no one behind you, don't have to use your blinker. And I was like, well, where do you think I was whenever this all took place? And he's like, I don't know. I was like, behind you. I've been behind you since we got into town. And he was not very happy about it. So the greatest part is that guy's brother works with my dad.
Really?
And so his brother comes in and was talking shit. I was like, oh yeah, this guy pulled over my brother, said this, that, and the other. And but of course he had no idea the relation. And so he's like talking all this shit and starts talking about the police department, some of the people that work here and this, that, and the other. And so I guess eventually my dad was like, all right, hey, listen, man, I'm going to give you one chance to just shut up. And we're going to move on to this. Or he's like, oh, I had no idea, man. I'm so sorry. But the transition went from, a pretty decent sized town that stays big near the metro or stays pretty busy during the metro to out here and back out there. I could never go back to a small town again. What you guys do, it's completely different. It's the job is just totally different. You guys are like social workers with guns and most of these scenarios dealing with people and stuff. And even our side, our city is not that big, but relatively speaking, our call volume and stuff is just different. And, the locality is different, but it was a huge eye opener to come out here, and I grew up in a small town, but nothing like this, it's probably 2-3 times the size of this and had a lot more business and tax revenue stuff. And so the police department, even there, was totally different. The sheriff's office helped patrol stuff too. So, but yeah, so I appreciate the opportunity, but never again.
Social workers with guns is accurate.
Yeah. It's like, and that's the thing is I look at a lot of stuff and then, and then you look at stuff like, I see you guys on fire calls or because I can still see you on our CAD system, and fire calls. I was on patrol the other night and hear on the radio that the oldest major is going to commandeer a fire truck.
We do that quite often.
And I like it. So.
They finally just gave us the code. We stopped having to pop the door. Yeah. We broke a couple knives, Jimmy and that, to get in there to steal a fire truck. First time that happened, dude, I was like, oh, he's going to be pissed. Ooh, he's going to be pissed.
Tell him he's got the money to replace it. It's fine.
Just leave the door open for you.
Yeah.
We'll have more coming up on Code 0.5.
If you're looking for a political podcast that goes beyond the headlines, check out the Beltway Briefing. I'm Howard Schweitzer, CEO of Cozen O'Connor Public Strategies. Every week on the Beltway Briefing, our team of former Republican and Democratic presidential appointees, Capitol Hill veterans, and political advocates shares behind-the-scenes perspective that cuts through the noise. If you want the inside scoop, subscribe now to the Beltway Briefing here or wherever you get your podcasts.
So Renniks, he always talks about his DOC training that he received. He's working at the camp. So the lowest facility, right?
Oh, no.
And I used to work for the Federal Bureau of Prisons, and they have a transfer center in Oklahoma City. And it's ran by the Marshal Service and the Federal Bureau of Prisons. So marshals are responsible for moving all the inmates. So there's pretrial inmates and sentenced inmates and all kinds of stuff. So we had the thing. But I keep hearing these war stories about Renniks and his DOC training, but you worked at a camp, right? Like it was a low facility?
Yeah.
Okay. So I just...
it wasn't that great.
How much fighting happens at a low... Because ours, we make fun of... In the Federal Bureau of Prisons, there's a thing where you talk about camp. So all the CEOs will talk about how great they are and how big of a monster they are and all these fights and stuff. They always work at camps, right? And then they're like, how many incident reports? Well, how many people have you charged while you're there, whatever? And you start getting the truth. So I'm just curious because I've got to know this at the camp. How many violent offenders are there?
They actually have more. They kind of started... I want to say it was 2019-ish. They started incorporating more violent offenders into the smaller facilities, I guess to combat the overflow of violent offenders in the
I don't believe him, but it's fine.
That's what we were told anyways.
When he starts freaking using big words.
I'll distract him with
recycling something he's heard.
Yeah. Listen, that's just what I was told, okay? I was just
that's
there.
What they say, whoever they is.
Yeah, they.
So, no, but the federal side was super cool. We got to do a lot of cool stuff. But a lot of cool people. So we talked about Kodak Black. We got to fight him. We got to blow him up with a less lethal grenade. That was wild. That's a story I tell everybody that listens. Yeah. So he got sentenced to federal prison, and he was in a holding facility prior to being sentenced, and he attacked a female guard. So he beat her so badly he ruptured her like the lining around her intestines, and did some other stuff.
Now, for the people that don't know who Kodak Black is, they don't know who it is.
Yeah, so he started out on SoundCloud as a rapper. I call him a mumble rapper, whatever you want to call him, and kind of got famous. Been on a lot of big label stuff, and my favorite, some of the TikTok audios. But anyway, so he kind of there, and he got wrapped up for, I think, gun charges is what he was for federal time after felony conviction, and. So he was there. He beat them up. So because he was disruptive, they brought him to us, and we're considered administrative level facility, which is the highest like security level. And while he was there, he was very disruptive with us too. So he would refuse to eat. He would throw stuff at staff. He would try to fight people or whatever.
So he was a super gremlin.
Yeah, and the thing is, he's like,
with it.
Yeah, he's little bitty, and he doesn't. Well, the thing is, he doesn't actually fight. So what he'll do is he'll like attack people. But he won't actually like fight him. But as soon as somebody shows up that's like willing to throw down with him, he's over. He's like, oh no, I can't.
So he's a toddler.
Right. Yeah. He's like, so he attacked the lady staff. He attacked a couple of the nurses and stuff. But then as soon as staff shows up, he's like, oh, I'm done. And you're like, oh, all right, sure.
So he didn't actually attack any like male staff.
No, he wouldn't. Yeah, no, he wasn't a man. He just attacked people that couldn't defend themselves.
Once the can of ass whooping showed up,
he was done. He was over. He was like, oh, it's coming. Well, so we get up there and I was like, hey, man, like the marshals are here. They're going to transport you to wherever. And he's like, I'm not going. And I was like, well, you're going to go, but it's about, are you willing to go, And he's like, nope, not going to do it. So call the lieutenant. It's like, hey, got a guy, he's refusing to come out. Like they're here to pick him up. And they're like, well, he's, tell him he's going to come out. I was like, no. So lieutenant comes up there and this guy's super cool. And he goes up there and he's like, hey man, listen, like I get it, whatever, but you're going to be going. So don't make us do anything. He's like, fuck you guys, I'm not going. So the lieutenant calls a warden. And at this prison, we had a warden. And he's notorious. So he's been around he was the longest serving warden in the Federal Bureau of Prisons. But this man, always in a 3-piece suit, come in. He would come in and tear up units. He would come in and like grab inmates up, and be like, "You're coming with me." Like he'd go every day.
He'd go to work.
Yeah, every day he would take all his administrators, and they would all eat. They would go to a unit and eat lunch with the inmates. He's like, if this food's good enough for them, it's good enough for all of us. So like, go there. And he would specifically do it on bad food days because he's trying to get them to change the stuff. And anyway. So he's notorious. Down in Beaumont, there was a riot, and one of the lieutenants that worked with us, he was his assistant there, and he said they got called to this riot because he cut down all the trees. So Beaumont was the last federal prison to have trees in the yard, and people were throwing contraband at these trees. And so Fox said, hey, he pulled all the inmates out there and said, if I catch any more stuff in the tree, I'm going to come and cut them all down. And they were like, oh, yeah, sure, whatever. A couple weeks later, they caught contraband coming in the trees again. So he brought a chainsaw from home, and he went out there and chopped up these trees. And then he bought axes for the inmates and said, hey, until these trees are cleaned up, everybody's locked down. And so for a couple weeks, the inmates wouldn't do anything. And finally, they're like, all right, we'll chop up the trees. So they chopped them up, loaded them up on trailers, and they shipped them all out. I mean, this man.
I like this guy.
Yeah, he ruled with an iron fist. Now, he was super particular, right? Nothing was ever right. Like one of my biggest things, he'd send back reports or whatever, and he would mark on something. And whenever I review reports or whatever, I go through the whole thing, mark the errors that need to be fixed. Now, he would do one, and he'd crumple it up and be like, don't bring it back till it's fixed. So you fix that error, and then you bring it back, and then he'll find another one midway down and crumple it back up and throw it. And you've got to, and so he's super strict about chain of command too, right? So you can't just bring it to him, right? Because everybody else already signed off on it. No, it's got to be. But anyway, so he would come in the units and he would tear stuff up. He would grab up the inmates. He'd put them there on holds. He'd be like, well, now you're stuck here until I tell you can leave, and like all this other stuff. So we call old Fox, and Fox is like, well, and he gives me a list of lethal munitions. So before we can like make entry, we have like basically a team that'll stack up there and go in. So he says, you can use 2 of these stinger ball grenades, which are basically, they look like a traditional grenade, but instead of like shrapnel or other things, it's little rubber pellets. So there's about 30 to 40 rubber pellets inside. So you throw it in, and then these things bounce all over. And when you throw it inside of a cell that's small, it goes off. First of all, it's horribly loud, and you'll just hear bing, 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 bing for the next like 20 seconds, right? Followed by like shrieks and skrills. So he's like, use those, and if that doesn't work, then switch to the foam baton. So it's a 40 millimeter like rubber grenade that you shoot out of the 40 millimeter grenade launcher. And they said if that doesn't work, you can use OC, which I'm allergic to OC, so it's out on that deal. But we also had what was called flash strips. So they're the same power as a flashbang grenade, but they're like a piece of paper. They're thin, and you can slide it under there. And it was designed for people that would barricade doors or whatever and trying to put objects against the doors to keep us from coming in. You could slide those in there. But I've seen inmates that were like standing on top of them when they went off, and it'll blow them all the way back. So they would do that. They'd take their mattress and be like, hey man, get up against the door. Don't let them in. So they're all like crammed up against the door. You just and it blows them all the way back against the wall. And you're like, whoops, and that's unfortunate. So anyway,
Unfortunate.
yeah,
It's a self-correcting problem.
So there's all these steps, right? So you go in there and there's a step called conflict avoidance, and it's got to be somebody that's trained in conflict avoidance. So if you went to hostage negotiator school, if you were a clinical psychologist, because we had psychologists on staff all the time, or the chaplain for some reason, and the chaplain was a super weird guy. So he's in his like mid 40s. One of the highest paid chaplains in the country, right? And they all called him the child molester, right? Because that's what he looked like. And he came up there. He has all the inmates hated this guy. They wouldn't talk to him. They wouldn't do anything with him. Super nice man, but super weird. Had no social skills for being a chaplain. And he came up there, and I kid you not, he opens the door, the little slot to Kodak Black, and he looks in there, and he said, "Hey, God sent me here to tell you to cuff up." And he says, "Fuck you." And he says, "Well, I did everything I could." And he closed it back and he walks off. So we go up there and we go through our little rhetoric. We have to introduce ourselves. And I tell him, "Hey, you tell them step by step, this is what's going to happen. We're going to do this. And if you continue to resist, we're going to do this. And if you continue to resist, we're going to do this. And then we're going to come in and we're going to like forcefully take you in." And he's like, "No, we're not doing it." But they're standing there all scared and they're like wrapped up in their little mattress, like facing the door using a shield kind of. And I'm like, "Hey, I'm gonna throw this grenade there. This is your last chance." And he's like, "We're not coming out. We're not." All right, so just pull it, chunk it in, close the door, wait a couple seconds, boom, and you hear the thing, and then you hear, oh man, we gotta stop. So it's a celly in there going, "Come on, like we gotta go. Like I don't want any part of this." And he's like, "We're not giving up. We're not giving up." And I was like, "All right." So like, crack a second one. And I go to open the door and I go to throw it and I throw it and then all of a sudden a pair of hands comes out. I'm like trying to go up and I was like, "Oh no!" Boom! And his celly's like, "I'm done. I'm so sorry." He's like, so the celly cuffs up and then he takes off running to the back. So he's got cuffs on. He's trying to hide because he don't want to get hit with any more stuff. But we were still going to keep using this until this guy gives up. And so Kodak Black is like, "I'm not coming out. You're never going to get me." So he's crawled underneath the bunk at this point. So we take the 40 millimeter and these things will bounce, right? So you just aim at the foot of the bed and just crack one off. Oh! I was like, you have to wait 5 seconds between rounds. I was like giving him commands and he's still not coming out. So fire the next one. And then all of a sudden he just comes crawling out. He's like, I'm done. And he like planes on the floor. "Hey, you got to get up and come to the door." He's like, I'm not getting up. I said, "You're going to get up or you're going to get hit with another one." And he's like, "Nope." So he's just laying there and crank off another one. And then finally he gets up and comes out. And he's like, "Well, you guys weren't playing around." And then the best part of that after dealing with these people is that everyone else that's in the special housing unit has heard all this commotion, right? So now they are all terrified. They're like, "Guys, whatever they tell you to do," like for the next, until so the inmates constantly cycle, right? They're like there for like a week to 2 weeks. So they're constantly cycling. So for that week or two that they're all there and new ones haven't come in, they're telling me, "Hey, somebody new," because dude, don't mess around, man. They're gonna blow us up. And he's like, "Oh, okay." But Fox, that's the way he comes up there and he's like, "Oh yeah, that's what happens when you mess around in my prison," and like he was great. And he was the same one. So they had that riot down at Beaumont, and this guy's working with us. He's telling me, he said, so Fox comes rolling up off duty, and he said he's always wearing a suit. I've seen this man ride a motorcycle around the metro. I've seen he's always in a suit. He's carrying a big 1911 if he's not inside the prison. But he comes rolling up, and they're like, "Fox, what do you do?" He's a real soft-spoken guy, and he's like, "Well, here's my credit card." And he's like, "All right." He goes, "You got to go down there to the wall world and buy every gun and bullet they have, and we're going to have to start shooting inmates. They won't come back where they're supposed to be." And he said everybody looks at him, and so he takes off, and he goes down there, and they come back, and luckily the riot was resolved with that issue down in Beaumont. But they call it Bloody Beaumont from when he was there because it was supposed to be like the most dangerous penitentiary in the country. But yeah, he was great. So, but I tell you, like, and Renniks makes this joke, but DOC, prison, jail, wherever, it's a great place to start. One, you kind of learn the clientele that you're going to be dealing with on the street as a cop. You learn to spot your frequent flyers. You learn how to communicate with them. You pick up the lingo. And that's where, like, I hear you talk about some of your FTO stories. Those guys that have no experience and you have no expectation of what it is. Like, you just don't believe. You believe everything people tell you. You don't think anything suspicious, right? They're like, you learn body language and other stuff. So it's a great place to start. Now, is it as, the ninja training that Renniks claims that it is? No.
I've never claimed any kind of ninja.
Have you seen any LARPs that work there? Like, no, it's not. It's like most of the people that couldn't be cops, but like some of them are cool, But I don't know. I think it's very applicable training, all jokes aside. Something that I learned a ton. And you learn really quickly that everybody lies to you is one of the biggest things. Because I see even new guys now come out And this guy would be like, oh, no, that's like not what happened. And they're like, well, he said that's like not what happened. I'm like, yeah, but did you like see him the way he was shifty and like, you know, the way he's acting, like all the other things that come. And they're like, oh, well, I mean, why would he lie about it? And you're like, everybody lies. Like, you'll figure that out eventually.
Yeah.
So I think there is applicable parts, but probably not the ninja training Renniks claims that it is. So
Oh,
I was going to say, it's hard to believe anything Rennick says when he's, what is
carries
it,
a
the AI
lady's gun.
said?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he carries a lady's gun, but then he's a jackass.
Oh,
yeah.
he was comical relief that turned into a jackass. Dude, I died when I heard that. I was like, that was the most accurate description I've ever heard.
Yeah.
Speaking of it being a jackass, so there's this one night we're sitting down here and we watch a lady blow a stop sign.
Oh my God.
I would say, she didn't slow down. But anyway, so mind you, it's clear. All right. It's super dark. There's nobody coming. You can tell. So Renniks pulls her over and he gets her there, and it's an old lady. And I mean, like an old lady. And boy, he was whipping out that ticket book faster than you've ever seen. He goes there, starts arguing with her. I felt bad for her. I tried to get him not to write that ticket.
You liar.
No,
Should I tell them what you really said?
Oh, no.
But
She starts arguing with me. So
Oh, my God.
I start to walk back. He looks over at me. He's like, so you going to ride it or am
well,
I?
she looks at it, she goes, I've been driving this road for 40-something years, and I always stop at that there stop sign. And I was like, well, man, we
Not tonight.
Yeah, we both watched you not stop at that stop sign. She basically just said, you guys are liars. I was like, all right then. But yeah, and then Rennick says this thing where he doesn't want to tell me what time anything is until like 5 minutes after I'm supposed to be there. So like that we get a court date, apparently. And he texts me like that day. I'm at work, and he's like, hey, you going to make it today at 2? I was like, yeah, if I knew it was today at 2, like a week ago, so I could have been there. But so I don't even know if did they end up finding her guilty of it or not? Because she took it to trial.
Yeah, she took it. I don't remember what happened with that. I don't think so.
I don't remember.
Speaking of which, I got 10 trials in January for traffic.
Jesus.
Yeah, but
I'll call it traffic safety.
Yeah, but it's like, I mean, you actually have like big stuff there though.
Yeah. Well, but not all these
How much dope do you come across?
Honestly, like lately, it's been all user stuff. We find a ton of meth, so we find a lot of marijuana, right? But most of that's like other stuff, right? So you're impounding something for DUS and you find it, or you like arresting them for warrant, you find it. But normally, it's like a user amount. We'll just seize it for destruction and not do anything. But a lot of meth lately, man. A lot of meth. We're seeing fentanyl overdoses as much as anywhere else in the metro. So we're doing 2 or 3 of those a week, responding to those.
Yeah, we've started to see an influx of fentanyl down here.
So we actually did a training a few weeks ago with the ATF about responding to fentanyl overdoses and treating them as crime scenes and whatever. Because a big thing that you're seeing here is that cops will respond to a overdose and they'll say, well, we don't really know what did it. And we're all smart enough with context clues we could do it. If you walk in and you see somebody shot, you don't go, oh, we'll wait for the medical examiner to get with us because we're not really sure what did it. You know?
Right.
So you treat it as a homicide. You treat it as an unnatural death. And so basically the ATF came in and said, hey, we're getting all these cases where people have not treated it like a crime scene. So in 6 months, whenever the toxicology report comes back and they say, hey, this was a fentanyl overdose, instead of working that like a crime scene like they should have, they just package it up as this death and they send it on about its way. And when you go back, try to work that crime scene, obviously 6 months later, there's no crime scene, no integrity of a crime scene or anything else. So they're teaching this class to work with metro agencies and other stuff and responding and treating these as murder one crime scenes, because in the state of Oklahoma, if you overdose somebody, whether it's on purpose or not on purpose, and you dealt them the drugs, it's murder. So they're working these, and they've actually got a couple convictions. So it's something we did kind of responding, but what they were showing us is what these companies are doing. So they're buying fentanyl in China, shipping it to Mexico. And in Mexico, they're doing pill presses where they're mixing it to make it look like ibuprofen. They're mixing it to make it look like Xanax or any other prescription narcotics. And he said basically the ATF, in terms of their seizures and stuff and in the metro and working with our other drug task force stuff, is that they've received no pills, like intercepted any real pills anymore. So in the last year, all the pills that they're intercepting, they're moving when you're finding 30,000 tablets of it's not people buying grandma's pills anymore. You can't go to the doctor and you can't bamboozle that system. So they're all fake pills that look like whatever they are in their fentanyl. So he said, honestly, it was street cop, and they told us, if you come across anything, if it's not in a prescription bottle, and he said, you will catch people that they've stolen a prescription or they've bought a prescription for somebody or whatever. But if you come across those pills, he's like, treat it like fentanyl, because there's a 90% chance that's what it is.
Wow.
So it's something that, and we're not even allowed to test. If we have anything that is, so we'll test meth and a few other things like that, we know what it is most of the time. But if we come across any pills, we specifically send it to OSBI. We don't touch it anymore. We don't do anything just because you don't want to run the risk of doing it. But
yeah,
we'll see what we've run across. Stuff we run across is like it's been meth, and you go to test it and just pull one of the fent tests just to see. You got it mixed in with the meth.
Oh yeah, and you'll find we have a ton of stuff that's laced. They cut it with other stuff, and we will. So we ordered more, and actually, what the ATF uses and what we're going to start using is they don't even use the. Like Nick's test where you can put stuff in there. So they've done away with that for fentanyl, and it's literally like a piss test, that you would take, like somebody you're going to test them to see if they have any drugs in their system.
Really?
You take that, but it's specifically for fentanyl. So you just take a little bit of the powder. In the bottom of this cup, there's liquid. Put it in there. You just whirl it around. It tells you whether or not it's fentanyl, and then you can package the whole thing and throw it away. So they said it's the most accurate test they've found. And because what we're running into, too, is we get a lot of false positives on fentanyl tests. So a lot of substances will do a false positive, and then when you send it off to get analyzed, they'll come back and say it's not fentanyl or whatever. And if you guys do come across any pills, this is another thing that they're running into. The state lab, when you send them a pill, say, hey, we want this identified, they will, if you don't specifically say that you want it tested for this, and this substance, they'll kick it back and say, yeah, we looked at it, and it's a Percocet. Because they're identifying it visually. They won't actually break it apart and test it unless you specifically request. So we've had some of those get kicked back that now we don't know if that's what they are or not because we didn't specifically request. In the past it's happened. So, but mainly user amounts, man. We haven't had anything. The Metro, so our sheriff's office that patrols our Metro, they've been getting their interdiction team's been getting a ton of stuff off the interstate. But
That's
us
good.
just a lot of user stuff, and a lot of ours are the rich kids, going through the high school phase and stuff that we'll find user amounts on and stuff, but it hasn't been a ton of anything crazy actually. So we've had my first day at FTO, we had a good standoff with a guy that came out with a gun wearing a vest.
Are you telling this one?
Yeah. So me and my partner, so we get a call from the city manager, and he says, hey, we've had one of our city employees get assaulted. So I drive over there and start talking to her. Well, she didn't really get assaulted. Guy came out and threatened her. He said, hey, if you don't get off my property, I'm going to shoot you. And she was like, okay. So she leaves. Rightly so. So she calls us, and I said, well, let's go over there. And the city manager and one of the public works guys is like, we'll come over there and we'll stand there and just make sure he leaves you guys alone while you disable his water. So we get over there, and he's welded the box closed, the water meter. So he's like, well, let me go get my tools and I'll be right back. So we're standing there. And the guy comes out and he's like, hey, you guys need to leave. This is my private property. Like, you don't have a reason. So, well, this is a public easement, and we're just hanging out here until they're done, and then we'll be going. And he looks at me. He's like, hey, I'm going to go inside and strap up and come back out. You remember I shoot better than you guys do. I'm like, oh, no, now we're not. So he goes, take off. We take off trying to, keep him from going back, because he beats us back inside. So I was like, all right, boys, let's keep an eye on. Comes back out wearing full battle rattle, got a gun in his hand. And we're like, oh, so we set up a perimeter. They
what the hell?
Negotiate with him for hours. He's crazy. So he's talking about he's a special agent, did all this other stuff. And so I start doing some research on him while we're standing out there, and he's got some VPOs outstanding and some other stuff. And he has a warning that says, prior law enforcement. I'm like, okay, maybe, he's talking about how he has weapons of mass disruption, and if we don't leave, he's going to blow up the world, and he's going to do this. And one of his sons is the Antichrist, but one of his sons is Christ. So they balance each other out. He can control the world, and the typical crazy guy. And eventually talk him out. We have to forcefully take him into custody. Well, then when I start doing a little research, guy really is we worked at the same federal prison, and was an ICE agent for a while. And just went off his rocker and ended up getting fired and do some stuff. But so that was the first day at FTO back from the academy was this guy, and I was like, well, this is the way to start it. And then everything else since then seemed a little boring because we do the stuff. But we've had some good stuff since we've been there. Caught a serial burglar that caught him in progress as he's leaving a house. That was pretty cool. But in the last month and a half, it's been really quiet. Ton of domestics. We get a lot of stuff. But it's kind of a wealthier city, the population is, so it's a lot of civil stuff, a lot of domestic stuff. Not as cool, but we're fortunate in the fact that we have a super good police chief, and she's very big on, hey, go out and do your job, go out and get the bad guys. She'll let us chase people, she'll let us do stuff. So very fortunate in that front. They try to get us the best equipment and training we can get. We have people come out all the time doing trainings for the department and stuff. So very fortunate on where I ended up. Like them a lot, a lot of the residents, like I said, because of the type of people they are, they're really frustrating to deal with. But honestly, that's a lot better than some of the places you could get stuck. So it's been fun. It's like I said, it's a huge change going from here to there, you know, doing stuff. Just the amount of traffic. I was like, why are there so many people out at 3 a.m.? Like, you know, they're like, oh wait, we're in right next to the major metro. That's why there's people out at 3 a.m., you know? And you can and they were still small enough that you know some of your frequent flyers, right? You know, okay, hey, these are the so-and-sos and they live at this house. And they're we arrest them every other week for dealing dope. Or, you know, you go here, okay, this is the place where, you know, whatever. We have a lot of animals at large. That's another thing I don't miss. Like, you think for a city the size we are, this is Farmer John, and these are his cows that get out every week. You go down here. This is little Susie's horse that gets out all the time, which I about smoked a horse the other morning. That was terrifying. Coming back. So we're supposed to be a 3-man town, right? We're supposed to have 3 people on duty all the time. And because of our staffing level lately, there's one of us. So coming back from the jail, have calls pending, and I'm like flying up one of our like roads coming back from the interstate, and come over this little horse just comes like trotting out, stops and like looks at me. So I'm like full locking brakes on the Crown Vic, coming to a squeal and stop. And
is that the one that's all go and no whoa?
Yeah, it's all go and no whoa. Yeah, this thing is a pile, man. It's been totaled 3 times. Hey, it's only got 124,000 miles on it though, so you know it's got a lot of life left. Oh yeah, so except for the seat, whatever dude wallered this seat out, he just did a number on this thing. There's no padding left, like it's miserable. But so slide to a stop. I kind of honk the horn at this horse, and he just takes off running. So we chase. I like follow him for like a quarter mile. And he runs up to this house where the gate's locked, but it's got all these horses on it. And I'm like, oh man, that's a clue. So like, look, so I'm there. And little Susie comes out. She's like 5, and she's like, "That's my horse." She like comes out there, and all I could think the whole time was like, man, if I'd have smoked that horse, she'd have never forgave me. Like she'd have hated cops until she died. Yeah. That one killed my horse named Toby. I was like, oh,
I hate the police.
Yeah, the worst people. And then my first real domestic. So we get called. It's like just 6 a.m. and I'm FTOing with the captain. The captain's been in this same city for like 20 years. He's a big old dude. They call him tiny. He's like 6'8", and probably weighs 480 pounds. I mean, he's huge. Anyway, so we get there, and they're like, hey, it's a domestic in progress. These 2 brothers are fighting. Mom's called it in. And we get there, and it's a pretty like nice trailer house. They've got a decent setup, and we get up there, and one of the brothers is well-to-do. He's an electrician. Well, he's taking care of the rest of the family. So the rest of the family is what we'd call Tweaker, probably Tweak's cousins as they live up there. And so they are all like, you know, it's just a big misdemeanor around there. So anyway, brother and well-to-do brother have been fighting, and he comes out and he goes, I tell you what, he's like, I got up. He's like, I'm the only one that works. I'm the only one that does anything around here. He said, I got up to go to work. He said, I got up to go take a shower in there. And I walk in, and this guy's, his kids have shit in my bathtub. And I was like, what? I was like, got off guard. So I went in there and I woke him up, told him to come clean it up. So the Tweaker brother's like, that's not what happened. And Mom's like holding it back between the two of them when I get there. He said, that's not even what happened. He said, my kids didn't shit in your bathtub. He said, it was a cat that shat in your bathtub. And he was like, we don't have a cat. And he was like, well, that's probably what it was. And they're like arguing. And then they're both like, well, you come in here and look at it. And you tell me what you think it is. Like, I'm not going in there. I'm not looking at it. And then the captain's like, go in there and look at it. And I'm like, are you serious right now? So I go in there with all the guys, and I'm like, yeah, that ain't cat shit if I ever seen it. And then here's the fights back on again. I'm like, oh, no. But I was like, I was just like, this is the worst. I was like, this is what I signed up for. I said, I did not come to look at poo in a bathtub for family disputes. Old people, man, the way I deal with
wait a minute. How did you determine that it wasn't cat shit?
It was massive. It was massive, and it was in swirls. I've never seen cat shit in swirls. You know, I've never seen a cat looking like do soft serve. Like, no, it was nasty. And it wasn't. So the thing is, this is what's wild. It wasn't just one like shit, and it wasn't like, okay, there's a little soft serve and the little dinger flyer flew over there. No, it was like multiple. So it's like at some point throughout the night, this kid got up. There's 2 of them. And they just both went in there and squatted and took shits in this man's bathtub. It wasn't just one. It was like multiple little soft serve piles.
Oh my god!
And I was like, and they don't have a cat or a dog. So like, if it was a cat or raccoon that broke in, like I ain't never seen anything like that.
I'll never be able to eat frozen yogurt again.
Just
little milk duds dotted out through there. But anyway, but I get so tired of the, and I know you, working for a sheriff's office, that all the civil stuff. My famous line is start a deputy. So anyway, got it's going on. Start OHP. That's really not.
Jason's just sitting here like you're a bastard.
It does drive me nuts. Like, and that's one thing. Like, I've done VPO service, done emergency VPO service, stuff like that, and they're always like, "Oh, well, we got to call a deputy." I'm like, "No, anybody can do it, man." Like, it literally says right here that anyone can do this and do a return, and you give it back to. And so that does drive me nuts. And like, I try not to argue jurisdiction with people unless it's something that, like, I had a crash the other day that was a bus. And it was just on on the other side. I was like, no, it's full of school kids. Like, that is yours.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So the assistant chief from that agency is the one patrolling because they can't keep anybody. And he comes over and he's like, I'm not taking. He said, I'm the assistant chief. And I was like, well, I'm not, but that's not my jurisdiction. So, and he's like, I'm not taking. He's like, I'm calling the chief. And I was like, well, you can call chief. She's going to tell you, look at the jurisdiction map, and it's yours. Like, it's on this side. And eventually he's like, well, I'll just work it. And I was like, thank you. So we left. But no, so he's, the civil stuff. I go out there and there's old people. And they're living in a super nice neighborhood, and they're arguing about the fence line, right? Like, oh, this side is his, and this side's his. And they're out there with like tape measures and yardsticks, and I'm like, and they're like going back and forth. And you can tell this is like, as they do, it's much more than whatever this is, right? Like, it's always some incident that's, it started 20 years ago when John told Susie, this, and like whatever. So I was like, can we go inside, sit down for a little bit? So we go in there. And I was like, I just want you to understand that you're a 65-year-old man with your 63-year-old wife and your 50-year-old neighbor. And you've called a 23-year-old kid to sit here and do this. Like, how does that make you feel that I'm sitting here having to play like your parents? And they kind of look at each other. I was like, so what's going on? And they're like, oh, no. I was like, no. I'm here. Like, I've taken time out of my day to come sit with you people. What's going on? Like, let's talk about it. And they're like, so then they get down this long rabbit hole. Well, like 6 months ago, this happened, and 7 months ago, this happened. And I didn't like the way that he said this. And I was like, and so they come to this, like, I was like, is this so hard? Like, when you have issues, you just come over here and say, hey, I'm mad because you did that. Please don't do that anymore. And they're like, we're so sorry. And like, I was like, so you guys want to report us? No report needed. And I'm like, okay, great.
And what's bad is that's such a rarity.
Oh yeah,
to get people that'll actually communicate and and be civil.
Yeah, and that's the thing too. And like, we'll go over there. If I hear one more time false advertisement, the amount of times I get called for false advertisement, I'm like, God, I got calls like, I went to buy this car off Craigslist and it wasn't what he told me it was, and I want to press charges for false advertisement. I was like, well, first off, that's my other pet peeve. They say I want to press charges. You don't get to press charges, unfortunately. That ain't how that works. But you've watched a lot of TV. But anyway, so we go over there and I'm like, that's not how that works, man. Like, you can't do that. I'm sorry that you didn't like what his ad said, but don't buy it. It's like my best solution. Or they'll call about, man, nosy neighbors are the worst. It's like, oh, well, nobody's supposed to be over at John Smith's house. I get to John, and it's John. He's outside digging at 3 a.m. I don't know what he's doing or why he's doing it, but like, it's his house. Leave him alone. Like, let him be. Or they'll say, we get one that she calls all the time. There's cars coming in and out of there all times of night. So I go over there and I'm like, hey, man, what? So he's like, yeah. He's like, those are all my cars, and my friends drive Uber for me, and then they pay me to use my cars. He's like, so yeah, they come through here all the time picking up cars to go drive Uber. And he also has like Amazon delivery vehicles that he like contracts out. And he's like, so they're coming in and out because they come pick up their cars. He's like, I don't know what she wants me to do. And I'm like, it's just or to mind her business, I guess. I don't know. Like, people, and then they'll call the police over the wild, but then they won't call it. So we had a burglary at one of our sports complexes. And
exactly.
It's not just here.
Yeah. So there's
everywhere.
So there's an audible alarm going off, and the guy drives by and sees 3 kids dressed in all black with hoodies on running from this building. And he said, well, I thought it was really weird. And I was like, you're the same guy that called because your neighbor wouldn't turn his Christmas lights off after 11. Like, you're the...
Yeah.
And then you see these 3 people running. Why would you not call the police? Like, hey, this is a weird incident happened. So, no, I don't know. I did get myself rocked the other day. I got headbutted like I've never been headbutted my whole life. I thought they broke my nose. So I was all the way up on the north side. So our town's about 27 square miles. So I'm up on the north, very north part of the town. Got a call for a reckless, or I'm sorry, he was they call it a drunkard, is the way they put it out over the radio. But he's down the very side side of the town, like barely in our jurisdiction. Like, if he takes 10 steps to the south, he's out of it. And they're like, hey, he's laying there passed out in the parking lot. He's got a beer in his hand. He's just like laying there. I was like, okay, well, I'll drive down there. And I'm thinking,
so
okay.
you grab him by the ankle.
Well, what I'm thinking is I'm like, I'm going to get this dude a ride home, or he's going to detox.
You just wake him up, ask him to take 10 steps to the south.
Yeah. So we have a place in the metro we can take that's a detox. You don't have to file charges. You don't have to do anything. You just take them there and they can sleep there and they sober up. They can get released. And so I'm like, and then as I'm kind of moseying down there, like, hopefully this dude just meanders off before I get there. And they're like, hey, he just got in his pickup truck and he's doing circles in the parking lot and he can't figure out how to leave. I was like, so I'm like, drive a little bit faster now. Like, God, please be gone. Like, hopefully he figures out how to go south. And so they're like driving there. Like, it's OHP's problem now. So I like get there and they said, oh, he's parked and the hazards are on and he's sleeping. So he's hopped up on the curb. The truck's kind of parked there. Hazards are on. Both mirrors are dangling off the truck. So, so I roll up behind it, kind of block him in. I go up there, and he's just like sprawled out across his truck, laying across the thing, just sound asleep. And there's a 24 rack of quarters in the bottom of his truck that's empty. And he's got the last one in his hand open, and like just sitting there. And I was like, and I'm the only one on duty, right, on a Saturday night. So I open the door, and I'm like, hey. Nothing. Hey, and he kind of turns and looks at me. What? And I was like, hey, man, are you been drinking? No. I don't drink. And he's like, hold on. I said, what's that? Is that not a beer? And he said, this? No. And he like puts it back down and kind of sits. I was like, all right, man. So I walk over there, get out, and he's like blasted. Well, he's doing this thing too where he's like, 10-4, affirmative, yes, sir. And he's like, sir, yes, sir. He's like doing this thing. So I get him out, and I'd get him through field sobriety, and he is plastered. I mean, like 3 sheets to the wind. And he's been fine up there. So I put him in cuffs and put him back in my car. And then that's when it all starts, right? Like that's when I guess it sets into his drunk mind that, okay, I'm going to jail. He starts kicking and doing stuff. It's like, hey, man, you can't. Somebody already busted out the back window of my Crown Vic through. We have the metal bars and stuff in there, and they still broke it out. So it kind of flops. So every time he kicks it, it goes ding, 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 ding. Like that thing, you know. So I know he's angry. He's like ringing the bell.
Talk about hoopties.
Yeah, hey, listen. So we have all new cars on order, and we can't get them in. We've had them for like 9 months. They've been sitting there. Yeah. But anyway, so make sure the truck can drive, and I park it, you know. So now if it's in a secure place, you can't take it. So park it, lock it up, and get back in there. And then he starts, you know, he's doing the mood roller coaster. Fuck you and fuck this. And I'm sorry, man. Like, let's just work this out. Like, I can't, you know. And then he's like taking a nap, and he wakes back up, and he's angry, and he starts yelling. I'm like, hey, man, like, you need to calm down. So we get to the PD, and one of the deputies is going to help me. So he's running the intox for me. As we're walking in, there's a little cage where you kind of sit them in the intox machine. You know, it's like probably 2 people wide and like 3 people deep. You could, you know, but there's just a bench. You sit there, and there's a hole cut out for the intox machine. And he says, hey, man, I don't want to sit inside there. I'm claustrophobic. I said, okay, what I'll do, I'll tell you what, I'll leave the door open, and you can sit down there, as you know, since you're going to, because he's been cooperative up till this point, really. He was a little bit squirrely when you go put the cuffs on, but you know, a lot of people are, you know, they start, you know, being a little nervous. And he's like, I don't want to fight you, man. I was like, hey, I don't want to. And all of a sudden, he just, with everything he has, jumps forward and just headbutts the crap out of me. I mean, just like fly. And I was like, oh, well, you bought the ticket now, you know? So Deputy and I assist him in the cage, and he blows a .27, .26.
Holy damn!
Yeah. So he was wasted.
Wasted.
Yeah, and
I like that.
I've had a .23 before, nothing like that.
Yeah, that's the highest. That's the highest I've ever seen. I didn't know. I mean, so we took him, you know, and as we're going to county, he's doing that up and down. Hell, he calls us all kinds of racial slurs and stuff too. It was great. I put that all in my report, and the captain's like, "Are you sure you want to put this stuff in here?" I'm like, yeah, that's what he said. Like, I want everybody to know this is what happened, you know? Like, and the body camera footage is great. So I wear it like dead center of my chest on my outer carrier. And so like all you see is him, and you see him, he makes the face, and he's like, wham. And I said, and then they've got cameras all over there for the intox stuff. So it was beautiful. I can't get any better than this. And so we take him we're going to jail. He starts crying. I can't go to jail, man. This is the jail in Oklahoma City is where everybody dies. And I was like, well, you know, unfortunate. As we're like,
should have thought about that before you headbutted me.
He's like, can I go to Cleveland County, please? And I was like, no, because he lives in Norman. So I was like, no, you can't go to Cleveland County. But why? As he's like crying. He's like, they're gonna beat me up. So just headbutt him. As we're like driving up there, you know, like yes. I'm like, I don't know.
Well, hey, I'm gonna slow you down right there. I know you're on a roll. We're hitting a point where we're gonna cut this thing off.
Yeah, you're good.
We're gonna get you on another episode. I love the stuff you're saying.
I'm telling you, man.
And also, I mean, we kind of need to speak and let everybody know we're still here.
Yeah, we're here. He's got some good stuff.
He's just kind of taking it over.
Listen.
But hey, don't lose that traction. We're gonna shut this one off, and then we're gonna get us another one going.
Sounds
with you
good.
All right.
I appreciate it.
All right. Yep. Thanks for listening.
Later.
You have been listening to Code 0.5, the lighter side of police work. If you have ideas or suggestions for our show, we'd love to hear from you. Visit our website at code05.co. That's code05.co. And please consider making a donation at our Patreon page, patreon.com/code05. Be sure to use the digits 05. Thanks for listening to Code 0.5.